Hello and welcome to another AV Forums video review. I'm Phil Hinton, I'm the editor and I have been since 2003. I'm also a fully trained and qualified ISF and THX calibrator. Today we're looking at this, the Vivitek HK2288. Now this projector has been on the market for over a year now, and as such it's gone from £2,500 to now round about £1,300, which we think is worth a look. So let's start with the design. The design is good with the use of hard plastics for the chassis, and there's a sculpted design to the case. The lens is offset to the right hand side of the front plate when you look from the front, and the body is sculpted around this area to make it stand out. There are manual controls around the lens with the focus on the front of the lens housing, and the lens shift and zoom is situated through a recess on the top plate of the projector. The rest of the front plate is clean with just the Vivitek 4K logo to the left hand side. There are also adjustable feet to the bottom of the chassis for table mounting, and of course you can seal and mount the Vivitek with the correct mounting device. Around the back we have the connections on the Vivitek with a generous 3 HDMI 2.0 slots with HDCP 2.2 compatibility, and the HK2288 accepts 60p 4K 444 signals including HDR10 high dynamic range. There's also an audio out 3.5mm mini jack, an RS232 control port, as well as USB-A for power only and USB Mini B for service. To the left are menu buttons to operate the projector if you lose the remote control. The Vivitek HK2288 is a 4K DLP projector that uses the 0.66 inch DMD Dark Chip 3 chip from Texas Instruments, and this creates a 4K like image by flashing twice to create a 3840 by 2160 image to the eye. This saves on the costs of using a native chip and allows companies like Vivitek to release 4K capable projectors at a much lower price point than you would with a native chip. The lens has a 1.5 times zoom that is manual with a vertical lens shift that works to make the installation a lot easier without using keystone. Obviously never use keystone on a projector. The vertical shift is plus 15% and minus 10%. The HK2288 has also been designed for home cinema use in dedicated rooms as well as normal living rooms, and it will also accept HDR10 static metadata signals. It is not compatible with HLG Broadcast HDR or HDR10 Plus or Dolby Vision dynamic metadata systems. HDR is obviously always an issue with projectors and something we will cover later in the review. The Vivitek uses a 6-segment RGB color wheel that should provide enough coverage to match the Rec 709 HD standard for color reproduction, but it will struggle to produce a wider color gamut image because of this. There's also no filter used to provide the wider colors, so like most DLP projectors out there, the HK2288 is basically Rec 709 only. Image brightness is claimed to be 2000 ANSI lumens, and the native contrast is also claimed to be around 50,000 to 1. Bulb life of the 310 watt UHP lamp is also claimed to be around 4,000 hours in the dynamic eco mode, but this mode is not available when you're playing HDR content, as the projector defaults to the normal bright mode. That also increases the fan noise, and we did find noise levels on this DLP to be quite loud at 35 dB in normal and around 29 dB in eco mode. However, we also didn't notice any changes in the pitch of the noise, and that sometimes can be really distracting. We didn't find it on the Vivitek. It's a constant fan noise. Vivitek also claims to be using an advanced video processor for fluid video streaming and 12-bit programmable RGB color adjustments, and that cuts down on color bandings and gradient stepping, which can be seen in some higher bit content. There are also ISF calibration controls on board, but again, we'll cover this in more detail later. The supplied remote control is made from a white plastic which feels light in the hand. It's what you would expect at this price point, and it sits neatly in the hand, and button locations make it quite intuitive to use. There are two main locations for the buttons within easy thumb reach, and these are split between use cases. To the top are the power keys, source keys and instant picture access modes. Below this are the directional and enter keys with menu and exit positioned here, and these are the keys you'll use on a regular basis. There's also a 4K logo in a space with no keys, and then below that we have the aspect ratio selections, and below these are direct access keys for some lesser used option settings. We did find that the remote control was temperamental when it was used with our projector screen, and pointing the remote at the screen didn't always work. We found it easier just to point the remote directly at the projector, and it worked every time in that case. The menu and user interface of the Vivitek is best described as basic. Almost every control you would want is here, bar a working 2-point white balance. It's all rather cumbersome and not intuitive at all for most basic users. Moving first to the image settings, we have the picture mode selector and 5 options to use here, including day and night settings. We decided to use the movie preset for our review, as having a day and night option is useful for a TV and how it's used, but projector is normally in a dark room, so you normally just go with one setting only. One item that has been missing on some DLP projectors that we've reviewed in the recent past was a gamma control, but thankfully Vivitek has selections from 1.8 to 2.4, and our only suggestion here would be to add in a 2.6 option if that was possible. Otherwise, we found 2.4 in a dark room added the required pop to images. Also here are normal image parameters such as brightness, contrast, colour, saturation, hue and sharpness, but note that these are not the final calibrated settings that we used. These menus were filmed out of the box. We also have to exit the image menu to go to the colour menu to find our white balance and colour management settings. We're really surprised that there are no user controls under colour temperature for 2-point grayscale correction. All we have are presets for warm, normal and cold. The grayscale is the most important aspect of any image, and in our opinion a display must provide accurate 2-point or even 10 and 20-point settings so the colour of grey from black to white can be set correctly. Missing these out on a product that claims to be ISF C3 certified is quite a big deal. There is a way around this, and by going into the HSG settings of the CMS, we have hue, saturation and gain settings for the primary and secondary colours to correct the colour gamut. Interestingly, there's also a white setting in here, and it's in here using the RGB controls that we can set a 1-point grayscale correction. Obviously our feedback to Vivitek is, in future models, can you please give us at least a 2-point correction for the white balance? It really is that important. Under the lamp control and setup, you will find set once and forget settings, and then moving down to advanced we get 2 options that affect the HDR performance of the HK2288. HDR control is a basic auto and off setting, and it should be left in auto in most cases. The HDR settings are a little bit more important if you want to control what the Vivitek does with HDR signals. Setting this to either normal or detail greys out all the other picture controls when you feed the projector an HDR signal, so you have no control whatsoever. You need to set the HDR control to user, and then this allows you access to all the picture options relevant to HDR playback and make sure that you can set up the projector exactly as you want it. As you can see, we have to jump around the menu systems to find items that really should be under one page called image settings rather than spread around as they are. And Vivitek, you really need to add grayscale controls to any display you manufacture, please. As always, we first take measurements directly from the projector to remove the room and screen effects and see just what the baseline performance is from the Vivitek. Then we take measurements and calibrate to the viewing screen, which in our room is a Screen Excellence in light of 4K 2.38:1 screen. Out of the box grayscale is very accurate, and it needs to be, and this is obviously welcome because we've got no real white balance controls to correct things any further. So the delta E's are all under the visible threshold of 3, and on-screen grayscale performance is really excellent. Gamma is a little less curved, but we couldn't do anything to change this given the controls available in the menus, but it doesn't overly affect the image quality on screen in any way. The colour gamut performance is also very good for a DLP, as most really struggle to reach the HD Rec 709 standard. Here the Vivitek is actually producing a gamut that is wider than Rec 709, with some oversaturation of red, blue and green in the tracking results. The secondary points are a little better behaved, with only slight errors seen here, and with on-screen viewing material and away from test patterns, the image quality for the vast majority of viewers who will look at this projector in the out-of-the-box settings is very good indeed, but for perfectionists and videophiles we will look at the calibration results. With only the 1 point white balance correction available within the CMS system, we were not able to add any major changes to the white balance results for the grayscale, and as such they're mostly the same as the out of the box settings, which were actually really accurate to start with. We also tried to use the provided colour management system to correct the colour gamut, but found that we couldn't make any meaningful adjustments, and this is probably due to the baked in colour performance from the colour wheel and its coatings. As such, the primaries remain oversaturated at all points and wide of Rec 709. Once again, we actually don't think that the vast majority of viewers of this projector would notice any of these issues and inaccuracies when watching actual material, but image purists would obviously want better accuracy here. Moving to HDR, and as this is a projector, you shouldn't really expect a performance that would get anywhere close to an OLED or LED TV when it comes to higher dynamic range, and indeed this Vivitek struggled to give us more than 160 nits in an accurate picture mode, but it did at least attempt to try and apply the PQ EOTF gamma to HDR images without darkening things even more. Colours were also well off the DCI P3 gamut used for 4K UHD material at this moment in time, but as we saw, it also struggled to get just wide of Rec 709, so it was never going to give you the wide colour gamut performance. No DLP projector we've tested around about this price point at this moment in time can do that. Image contrast was also measured at 1620:1 for both SDR and HDR material. There was no difference with the type of content. Overall, the out-of-the-box settings are accurate enough to give most users an enjoyable image performance, but don't expect much from HDR content. And we also found that using a Panasonic UB820 with its HDR optimizer setting for low brightness projectors did improve the tone mapping quite significantly to give very reasonable performance with the Vivitek. So if this projector is of interest to you, that's the perfect player to match it with. Overall, we did find the Vivitek to be a slightly dark projector once calibrated in accurate picture modes, and as such it was just above 1000 lumens brightness, which is ideal for a cinema room or dark living room. The image does begin to wash out the more you add in ambient lighting, so it's best suited to rooms that can get as dark as possible. In our dedicated cinema room, it was capable of performing at its very best. We continued to test items such as motion, which was excellent on the Vivitek and is a real strength of the DLP performance. Note that the test patterns that you're currently seeing in the video do not represent the actual performance of the Vivitek, as the frame rates do not match the camera, so there's judder and tearing, which was not present in actual viewing of the Vivitek. We were surprised with the decent black levels on offer from the HK2288, an area that is traditionally a challenge for DLP projectors. While they're good for the format, they are still a dark grey colour and shadow details are still clipped low down in the blacks, but for a DLP they are a step up on other models in this price range. We also found colours to be vivid and well saturated, but also a little bit too red for some skin tones, especially with SDR content. With HDR material it wasn't really an issue, as red was the only colour that tracked properly to the DCI P3 colour gamut. HDR content can be displayed on the Vivitek, and it can show 4K materials with a realistic sharpness and edge definition. Indeed, image sharpness is superb with no signs of ringing, and upscaled HD images also look crisp and realistic without any obvious edge enhancement or ringing. Blacks are also decent for the DLP projector, but you can obviously forget about any HDR peak highlights or specular details. Dynamic range on the Vivitek is the same as SDR content, but at least with grayscale and colours looking decent for most of the material, watching 4K discs and streaming services, you do get the perceived high resolution and sharpness, which really does add to the image. We also noticed no issues with posterization during really challenging scenes in Blade Runner, or any gradation issues either. The 12-bit processing really does work on the Vivitek. As with most projectors, getting real HDR is unrealistic, and as such you are best accepting that the benefits you get with a 4K DLP is the ability to view the content with excellent resolution, great motion and excellent sharpness, but without HDR and no wide colour performance. And at this price point you really can't complain, because there are no other 4K DLP projectors that can do it either. However, because the Vivitek was a higher end 4K DLP in the market at its launch, it was £2,500 back then, it has the slight performance gains over the lower machines which use the 4 flash technique. It also has slightly wider than Rec. 79 colour, which the lower end models really struggle to provide, as well as a decent black level that is a step up on those lower models, and an image that stands up well in dark surroundings. The fact that this projector is now half the price it was at launch, and it's now competing with lots of 4K budget DLP projectors, it really is one that you should hunt out for image quality demonstration. And that wraps up our review of the Vivitek HK2288 4K DLP projector. As we've said within the review, this is a very good home cinema projector at the price point, and the price point being around about £1,300 if you shop online at the time of this video review. The only downside really to the Vivitek is the fact that the black levels are not great and shadow detail is missing in certain scenes, which is a trait of this level of 4K DLP projector. However, where the Vivitek really does score is against the competition. It competes against models that are a lot higher in price, and it's actually come into a market sector where there are projectors from BenQ and Acer, where the Vivitek is much better value for money if home cinema is the use for your projector. The only downsides really are that the Vivitek doesn't do 3D, which is a bit of a shame given it is aimed at the home cinema market, and it's a DLP projector which are usually really good with 3D in terms of motion and in terms of lack of crosstalk. However, given the price point, given the performance, and the fact that if you really do shop around online, you could probably pick it up for around about £1,000, this really does make the Vivitek a recommended product for us at AV Forums, given its price point versus performance. Had it been at its original £2,500 price point, we probably would have scored it around about a 7 out of 10, but because of the price and the performance, we're going to score it at 8 out of 10 with the recommended badge. If you'd like to see more videos like this, then please like and subscribe, and why not click the notification bell to find out when our next review is available.